lumière du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
And then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning?
A lot happens in a week these days. That was exactly 1 week ago when President Trump talked up disinfectants. A dangerously ignorant statement that spawned days of controversy and government corrections. And the issue there, and the issue tonight, is not fundamentally about ideology or politics. It's about science and truth. Government ignorance about science is dangerous during a pandemic. You know that. We know that. Maybe sometimes he doesn't know that. Today's problems are a long way from how presidents in both parties have tried to approach medical science, especially during crises. Here was President Obama in his very first inaugural address.
We will restore science to its rightful place and wield technology's wonders to raise healthcare's quality and lower its cost.
That was the asserted priority coming into office. He wanted people to know in the inaugural that science would matter, and he went on to take the restrictions that were on stem cell research and lift them. He went on to order federal agencies to maintain scientific integrity. He also joined the Paris Climate Accords, which he argued was a direct response to climate science. In fact, all the way back in 2010, it was Barack Obama who actually held the first ever White House science fair with students.
Because the United States has always been a place that loves science. We're here to celebrate these young scientists and visionaries. There's the folks who are going to come up with cures for diseases and new sources of energy and help us build healthier and more successful societies.
President Obama also happily leaned into the nerdier side of these things. Here he was firing a student's marshmallow cannon, all to prop up, to engage with, to show in a very real way all the different methods we can use from education to the rest of our lives to work with science. Now, of course, it's not all science fairs and games. The United States faced swine flu in Obama's first year on the job. And because we think this is relevant now, we want to show you exactly how that president led the country during a scary time of infectious disease, stressing the approach of his administration would be scientists taking the lead.
Our capacity to deal with a public health challenge of this sort rests heavily on the work of our scientific and medical community.
And as our scientists and researchers learn more information about this virus every day, the guidance we offer will likely change. What will not change is the fact that we'll be making every recommendation based on the best science possible.
That is what it looks like when a president warns the country very directly and speaks to them like they're adults to tell you, hey, some of this may change over time because we're learning as we go, but every recommendation will be rooted in science. That was the standard. Now Donald Trump claims he doesn't expect a second wave of coronavirus in the fall, publicly at odds with the experts who say it's inevitable. The last president took a different tack on the same issue 10 years ago.
We know that we usually get a second, larger wave of these flu viruses in the fall, and so response plans have been put in place across all levels of government. Our plans and decisions are based on the best scientific information available, and as the situation changes, we will continue to update the public.
A president warning you the flu can come back rather than pretending it won't. Obama had a similar approach dealing with Ebola.
And we have to be guided by the science. We have to be guided by the facts, not fear.
He went on to make a public display, meeting with a Dallas nurse who was recovering from Ebola, and gave her a hug right there for the nation to see. If you go further back, before the presidency, Senator Obama also discussed publicly his worries about the very kind of crisis we now face.
Since coming to the Senate 6 months ago, one of the foreign policy and health issues I've focused on relates to the avian flu. We must face the reality that these exotic killer diseases are not isolated health problems halfway around the world, but direct and immediate threats to the security and prosperity here at home.
For all the talk about what you can predict and what you can be prepared for, it is instructive right now to look at which types of approaches work, which types of risk management. It was in that same legislative body, the U.S. Senate, where that senator made clear he wanted scientists making the big decisions.
Who's going to be responsible for deciding that a quarantine in some circumstances is warranted? Do you think it would make sense to have yourself or Dr. Fauci or others, somebody who was saying, you know what, I am keeping track of all this stuff?
I hope I can help. I know this has been obviously a back and forth confusing issue. In reality, we're talking about something that's overwhelmingly a health issue.
We all know what we're dealing with right now. Back when Donald Trump was drawing Sharpie lines on a hurricane map, that was dangerous misinformation for those who were in the storm's path. That was part of the country. Now you can look at this and it's like we're drawing Sharpies all over the world map with the worst pandemic in a century, with potentially catastrophic life and death consequences. And you have questions about what happens to our safety when you have the misinformation coming directly from the White House, when you have scientists suppressed and basically ousted or sidelined because they disagreed with the president. None of that is supposed to be normal in the White House.
Promoting science isn't just about providing resources, it's also about protecting free and open inquiry. It's about letting scientists like those who are here today do their jobs, free from manipulation or coercion, and listening to what they tell us, even when it's inconvenient, especially when it's inconvenient. It is about ensuring that scientific data is never distorted or concealed to serve a political agenda, and that we make scientific decisions based on facts, not ideology.
It is Friday, the 1st of May of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, it's noon somewhere in the great expanse of the known universe, and probably even the unknown universe, because, hey, what is time? What is it? What is space? What is mass? Anyway, the French 77s are available for your imbibing pleasure. Just make sure you don't drink more than two. Sip, please. Do not guzzle. This is a sipping cocktail. Quite tasty, too. It is the most balanced cocktail in the history of cocktails. And, I'll go all the way to the Supreme Court if anyone wants to contest that. Because once you try it, you will know. But once again, it's a very potent spirit. Take care. If you can share while social distancing, please do. You can take off your mask while you consume this, because I presume you're going to be at home. Anyway, yes, they are all available, and don't get pinned to the couch. But there's a lot of work to do, and part of that work is getting out the vote. My God, we got to get rid of this fellow. We have armed insurgents. They're not protesters at the Michigan state capitol. Please. Those are terrorist armed insurgents storming a government state capitol. They are not redressing their government. No, they're not bringing their grievance. Well, they are bringing their grievances, but they are not trying to redress their grievances. They're trying to tell everybody what polite conversation is. And polite conversation is, hey, open up the government, make all the brown and black people slaves, and get them to cut our meat, butcher our chickens and hogs. Come on. It's a service economy. Get those slaves serving us. And they have guns, too. I know we can always play that game of, can you imagine if the Black Panthers went to the Alameda courthouse and stood in the steps with a bunch of guns? What would happen? Yeah, we had gun control ring and said, black people have guns. We better take the guns out of the hands of those people. And to do that, they had to make it sound like, oh, well, everybody has to be constricted on the use of guns, but we knew what that meant. Black people would have guns stripped from them when they tried to exercise their equal rights, their equal Second Amendment rights. And then all the white people went, oh, my God, they're going to kill us in our sleep because of all the terrible things we did to them. First of all, don't do terrible things to people so that several hundred years down the line, people are afraid that they're going to be some revenge exacted. You can start by doing that. Well, and if you haven't, I don't know. How about making up for it? No one's going to kill you in your sleep. We can put our guns down. All of us, by the way. And have a French 77. Please. It's Friday. Well, I had to have some Obama at the top. I should say it's hard. Because as happy and wonderful I feel to hear his voice and how soothing it is and what great memories, it also makes me very depressed. Because, my God, we don't have any of that running our government now, do we? And I'll say this, too. They didn't call Obama no drama Obama for nothing. And why did they call him that? Because he vetted, and he was the most vetted. Oh, yeah, he had to even show his birth certificate. I'm surprised they didn't measure his you-know-what. Because, I don't know, it looks like he's got some pretty big hands there, don't you think? So, the most vetted president ever in the history of the United States, who was known as no Obama drama. Because he vetted each and every single one of his cabinet members, and I'm pretty sure his vice president, too. And now, all of a sudden, but his neck rubs, but her emails. Okay, this is major gaslighting, and we know it. I don't want to say, oh, well, Joe Biden, should be absolved for his sexual assaults. Some people really consider it creepy when you stand across a room and say, I don't know, something innocuous. And it could be construed as uncomfortable. That made me uncomfortable. Which is a bit different than being literally assaulted in an elevator, on a jet aircraft, at a Jeffrey Epstein party, at a teenage beauty pageant. A little bit different, don't you think? So here we have a guy running the United States right now who has a long history of this and brags about it. And Joe Biden gives neck rubs, and it makes some people uncomfortable. It does. All right. This is where we are. I would presume that a lot of people know that this is the GOP playbook. It doesn't matter if it's Joe Biden. It is about the GOP playbook. And what also is the GOP playbook? That would be Vlad's playbook, too. The same charges leveled against his opponents we're hearing now. Except we have it in English, and they wrote it down over there in Cyrillic. Not much difference, though. In fact, you might say it's the ALEC. of how to defame your political opponent. Trump didn't know how to do this. Vlad had a playbook. It's how to defame your opponent in a box. All Trump had to do was fill in the blanks. And he did. Okay, so we have to have a massive get out the vote turnout, and we need to get this mobster out of office. And when I say mobster, I mean that he and Bill Barr also, and we're probably going to have to do a real purge, which is crazy in a representative democracy, but we're going to have to do it because we are infected with a virus from a hostile foreign power. And there's no room for that here. And we need to get them out of office. And I think that many of them should be in jail. Will they? Well, we better get to work. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The Louisiana GOP is trying to repeal the state's emergency declaration, but will lose federal funding to fight the virus and help small business. Well, that's because the GOP has always been known as forward-thinking now. An appeals court ruled against Trump's attempt to withhold funds from sanctuary cities. Well. And the NCAA is facing a federal lawsuit over violence against women at colleges and universities. Well, it's about time. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the Russian prime minister told Putin he has coronavirus and is stepping down to recover. And contradicting Trump's wild-haired conspiracy theories, the U.S. intel community for the first time definitively stated the COVID-19 virus was not man-made or genetically modified. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Link, and thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of our chat room link, that's right there by the social media scroll, deftly located by Superior Graphic Design. And I'll get a little bit more about that in just one moment. But if you take a gander to the leftish of the page, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the link to our Patreon page. And do please become a Patreon. It's listeners like you that have sustained us for almost 10 years now of continuous 24/7, 365 Resistance Radio. We've been broadcasting and fulfilling our civic duty as the founders originally intended, probably before the Magna Carta. And we thank you for that generosity, and we might implore you to keep it up. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and he's also responsible for all of our superior graphic design. Thank you, Tom. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam, and I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Codes about 10 minutes before showtime. So do follow me at Justice Putnam, and that way you'll get those show notes and links diaries linked up on social media from Daily Codes. Oh, yes, I do that about 10 minutes before showtime. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found mixed in with all the rest of us. We're down in the W's because I don't know, I just didn't want to do A1 West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. That's why. Okay, you're in a salon. All right, this isn't a news show. This isn't just merely a news read. Look about you. This is radio. We're in a lovely front part of a cafe with cookbooks lining the walls. Vaguely Frenchified, by the way. Very bright and sunny. And then we have the Speakeasy, out there past the old chef's table. We'll take a seat there before we leave for the weekend. Rest assured. Alrighty, let me say one more thing about the Biden thing. It is all too familiar. It's another butthurt emails. I understand that. And I understand why people are going to be up in arms because, sexual assault is a serious thing. And I'm not trying to belittle it. But it's too cute by half. And we know that. We know it's the GOP playbook. We know it's the Vlad playbook. And we know who's playing with the playbook. Now, if Biden actually, I don't know. I mean, if you read her Dead Dad's book, Tara Reid's Dead Dad's book, the assault allegations are surprisingly, not vaguely familiar, an absolute lifting from her Dead Dad's book. It's creepy. I don't know. If my dad wrote that kind of stuff, I don't think I'd be reading it. But my dad wrote academically scholarly journals that were pretty much peer-reviewed by members in his field. A little bit different. Well, of course, I let my son read my fiction and stuff. So there you go. All right. If Biden did terrible things, then he's out. There's no getting around it. We're done. We get another 4 years or more of Trump. So that's what we're up against, Yeah, Al Franken was creepy because he faked like he was going to grab an actress's boobs. Like a comedian. Like an, junior high school humor comedian, but still. A little bit different than assault in an elevator, on a jetliner, I don't know, at a Jeffrey Epstein party, or at a teenage beauty pageant. Please. Oh, man. Okay. If Trump has to respond to any of these questions again, he'll just call in to Morning Joe, and Mika will say, "Oh, wow. Did you do any of that? Oh, well, that's fine. How's Melania doing?" Yeah, that's how that interview will go again. Let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Did I tell you it's Blue Moon Spirits Fridays? Yes, I did. And I haven't even begun to imbibe on the French 77s yet. That's for later. Emily Singer of at the American Independent brings us this first offering. Republican state lawmakers in Louisiana are trying to repeal Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards' public health emergency declaration in an effort to end social distancing measures in their state, an extreme move that would also end federal funding to help the state deal with the economic fallout from the coronavirus. The move is part of a growing trend among GOP lawmakers across the country who are trying to undo coronavirus-related public safety measures implemented by Democratic governors before public health experts say it is safe. What is this? Is this another one of these situations that we've experienced here in this state and in many other states where rather than legislating for the matters at hand, GOP state legislators hightail it out of the state to prevent a quorum, to prevent democracy from working, nullifying an election that put the Democratic governor in there in the first place. We need a purge. We need to find out who's been taking money on the sly and from where, and if those contracts were in Cyrillic or even Mandarin. Leavenworth, for a period of time. And for those of the Stephen Miller ilk, after they've served their time in Leavenworth, they go to The Hague. The Republican lawmakers are frustrated with the stay-at-home orders public health experts recommend to stop the spread of the coronavirus. The measures have decimated the economy, causing at least 30 million people to lose their jobs. Well, the cupboards were never bare. Trump sold off all of the supplies in our stockpile. He got rid of scientists in the lab in China from the CDC. And now he has closed down a lab that is actually investigating and researching coronavirus and how it has transmitted from bats. Well, I suppose it goes to my old dictum. Property is always more valuable when delivered vacant to a hostile foreign power. Ted Hessen of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A U.S. appeals court yesterday, Thursday, ruled against a Trump administration attempt to withhold millions of dollars from so-called sanctuary jurisdictions that limit cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. The decision by the 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago upheld a pair of lower court rulings that block the administration from placing immigration-related conditions on law enforcement grants. Oh, sort of like a quid pro quo. I want you to do me a favor, though. Trump, who faces re-election on November 3rd, has made immigration a central theme of his presidency because of Santa Monica Gerbil Stephen Miller and his racist tendencies. Yeah, he's got his ear. And he frequently criticizes Democrat-controlled sanctuary jurisdictions for policies that he says protect criminal immigrants. Well, nothing says protecting criminals like pardoning war criminals. You know, the kind that shoot teenagers and, he did shoot them in the gut. And then he slit the kid's throat. Pardon that guy. Because he was making America great. The appeals court said the ruling would be applied nationwide, although one judge on the 3-judge panel that considered the matter said he would have narrowed the scope to the city of Chicago, which brought the lawsuit, obviously a Federalist Society plant. Federal appeals courts have issued divergent rulings over Trump's attempts to restrict funding to sanctuary cities, setting up a possible appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. Possible, Ted? Ted Hessen? That's the journalist here penning this piece. This is not a possibility. This is a feature, not a bug. Trister of the Associated Press brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. The NCAA is facing a federal lawsuit accusing the organization of failing to address gender-based violence by male athletes against female students at colleges and universities. Plaintiffs in the suit, filed this week in U.S. District Court in Michigan, include women who have been athletes at Michigan State, Nebraska, and an unidentified American East school. Other plaintiffs have been students at Michigan State or Nebraska. Defendants routinely issue harsh punishments against student athletes who accept payments in exchange for the use of their likenesses or who accept free meals, but they have no specific penalty for student athletes who commit sexual assault, the suit says. Defendants have repeatedly and persistently failed to make and take any meaningful action to mitigate the severe issue of sexual misconduct perpetrated by male student athletes against women at their member institutions. Now, a Nebraska spokeswoman said yesterday, Thursday, the school received a copy of the lawsuit against the NCAA and cannot comment on pending litigation because that's what they always say. And a message was left with the NCAA seeking a comment. The lawsuit accuses the defendants of negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent infliction of emotional distress, negligent supervision, fraud, breach of contract with student athletes, and breach of contract with non-student athletes. Well, we will follow how this lawsuit goes because this could be a big turning point finally in getting Title IX to really work. Well, that brings us to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, It Only Looks Like Eden. The English-language debut from Polish director Małgorzata Szumowska is an entry into the burgeoning category of psychological horror. Add to the recent Midsummer and Gretel and Hansel, we now have The Other Lamb, an allegorical tale of religious oppression and its fellow traveler male domination. As the movie begins, we meet a strange religious cult led by the Shepherd, perfectly cast in the person of Game of Thrones' Mikhail Hausman. He's a self-styled messiah with the look of a dime store Jesus portrait. His flock is curiously composed of only females who are divided between wives and sisters, distinguished by their color-coded garments. The wives wear red and the sisters blue, but it becomes clear that this distinction isn't sufficient to channel the shepherd's interests. Among the sisters, his favorite is young Sella, played by Raffi Cassidy from Vox Lux. She's just coming of age and has known no other life, but becomes our heroine here as the flock is forced to move from their existing compound to a new home deeper in the woods. It's her intuition, her interactions with an estranged wife, and her hallucinatory visions filled with menstrual imagery and snapshots of an alternate life that show her the way out and bring us to a conclusion foreshadowed in an early scene of a mauled lamb. Szumowska and cinematographer Michael Englert capture a look which is intimate, stark, and sumptuously dark, with lots of through shots and use of depth of field, a face through burning candles, a landscape through wet branches. While gorgeous and disturbing at a lean 97 minutes, The Other Lamb wouldn't have suffered from more attention to the inner workings of the cult or more scenes exploring Sella's betrayal. Still, it's a stunning achievement in creepy. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Karen Hopkin. If there's one thing we know about viruses, it's that they love to spread. The novel coronavirus is happy to use us humans as its host. Other viruses fancy honeybees. But like us, bees fight back. In the case of one particular virus, called Israeli acute paralysis virus, a study shows that honeybees actually use a form of social distancing to prevent transmitting the infection within their own colony. Of course, not to be outdone, the virus manipulates the bees in a way that spreads the infection to the colony next door. The study's in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Honeybees live in large communities that contain tens of thousands of related individuals in close quarters. So researchers got to wondering, how can bees keep infections from spreading like wildfire? While a graduate student at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, Tim Gernot developed an automated system for continuously tracking the behavior of thousands of individual bees. And he watched what happened when he introduced infected bees into the hive. Entomologist Adam Dozel, who worked with Gernot, describes what they saw.
We found in this study that within their own colony context, when they are interacting with their nestmates, usually their sisters, infected bees experience fewer contact behaviors, fewer mouth-to-mouth feeding contacts than bees who are not infected.
The researchers also saw the same sort of social avoidance when, instead of infecting the bees with a virus, they artificially activated the bee's immune system. So the behavior isn't driven by the virus, but by the bee's own immune response, which Dozel says makes sense. If honeybees are going to protect their colony and their queen from disease, sick bees need to keep their feelers to themselves.
They have to. They live in these really large colonies where everybody's touching each other all the time. They're all closely related. I joke that honeybees have been doing social distancing for millions of years.
At the same time, bees are under no pressure to keep infections from spreading to other colonies. And that's where the virus gains the upper hand. Amy Geffrey, who worked on the project as a graduate student, found that the guard bees from other colonies were actually less aggressive toward incoming infected bees than they were to uninfected bees. As a result,
the infected bees are accepted into the colony at about twice the rate of control bees or immunostimulated bees.
The virus, it seems, alters the chemicals that bees produce to communicate who they are and where they're from.
And so we think that one way that the virus could be gaining entry to these other colonies is by changing the bee's physiology in a way to make it more acceptable to other colonies' guard bees.
Well, that's bad news for beekeepers, who tend to keep tens or even hundreds of hives right next to one another.
It's a really ripe situation for bees to be able to move between colonies relatively easily and bring pathogens and parasites along with them.
Seems you gotta carefully mind your beeswax and keep kept colonies healthily, socially distanced. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Karen Hopkin.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
In this horrible time of economic collapse, it is truly touching to see so many corporate chieftains reaching out in solidarity with a hard-hit working class. We know they're doing this because they keep telling us they are. Practically every brand-name giant has been spending millions of dollars on PR campaigns in recent weeks, asserting that they're standing with us, declaring over and over, we're all in this together. Except, of course, they're really not standing anywhere near us. While we're waiting in endless lines at food banks and unemployment offices, The elites are still getting fat paychecks and platinum-level health care. The severity and gross disparity of our country's present economic collapse is not simply caused by a sudden viral outbreak, but by a decades-long plutocratic policy of intentionally maximizing profits for the rich and minimizing everyone else's well-being. As the eminent economist Joseph Stiglitz rightly put it, we built an economy with no shock absorbers. Jobs, once the measure of a family's economic security, have steadily been shriveled to low-wage, unreliable work, untethered to a fair share or any share of the new wealth that workers create. In a relentless push for exorbitant short-term profits, today's executives have abandoned any pretense that a corporation is a community of interdependent interests striving to advance the common good. Instead, while the honchos are richly covered, they're washing their hands of any responsibility for the health, retirement, and other essential needs of their workforce. Rely on food stamps and other publicly funded programs, they say, even as their lobbyists and for-sale lawmakers slash the public safety net. This is Jim Hightower saying these forces of American greed have shoved millions of working families to the economic precipice, and all it takes is a virus to push them over.
At an alarming rate, a new death penalty is being carried out in prisons and jails in the United States. I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. More than 100 inmates have died recently from COVID-19 in America's prisons and jails, a number that in all likelihood is about to skyrocket. An ACLU report indicates that COVID-19 deaths in prisons and jails could well double the total number of deaths from the virus in the United States. Because in prison, where social distancing is impossible, COVID-19 spreads like wildfire. The solution? The number of people who are locked up needs to be dramatically reduced. And it can be. A 2016 study from the Brennan Center for Justice found there was no compelling public safety reason to incarcerate 576,000 of the people locked up in federal and state prisons. For example, elderly people, when released from prison, have an extraordinarily low rate of recidivism for any crime. And in federal prison today, there are more than 10,000 inmates, 60 or older, most of whom have been locked up for a really long time. Those people were not sentenced to death for their crimes. Many can and should be released before COVID-19 kills them. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1886. That was the day that workers throughout the United States walked off their jobs in a coordinated, planned effort and demanded the 8-hour day. What made this strike truly revolutionary was that the workers were not asking for reduced pay for reduced hours. They wanted their pay level to stay the same. Chicago labor activist Alan Parsons explained this that March for the Chicago Daily News, saying, quote, "The movement to reduce the work hours is intended by its projectors to give a peaceful solution to the difficulties between capitalists and laborers. I have always held that there were two ways to settle this trouble, either by peaceable means or violent methods. Reduced hours, or 8 hours, is the peace offering. Fewer hours mean more pay. Reduced hours is only the measure of economic reform which consults the interests of the laborers as producers, which can only be acquired by possessing and consuming a larger share of their own project. This would diminish the profits of the exploiters." That first day of May, tens of thousands took to the streets in Chicago, and an estimated 300,000 protested across the nation, marching for the 8-hour day. The strike met with early success, but then 3 days later, an unknown person threw a bomb at a workers' rally in Chicago's Haymarket Square. The government crackdown against the 8-hour movement was quick and harsh. 8 men stood trial in Chicago for the bombing. 4 were martyred despite a lack of evidence tying them to the bomb. But the idea of the 8-hour day was not so easily crushed. It spread not only in the United States, but across the world. Now, more than a century later, May Day, this day, is the International Workers' Holiday. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Former Vice President Joe Biden, the presumptive Democratic presidential nominee, on Friday morning addressed allegations made by Tara Reade, a former Senate aide, that he sexually assaulted her back in 1993. Biden released a statement denying the accusation before appearing on MSNBC's Morning Joe.
It is not true. I'm saying unequivocally, it never happened. And it didn't. It never happened.
Do you remember her? Do you remember any types of complaints that she might have made?
I don't remember any type of complaint she may have made. It was 27 years ago, and I don't remember, nor does anyone else that I'm aware of. And the fact is that I don't remember.
Ms. Reade claims that she filed a complaint in 1993, but doesn't have a copy of the report. When asked about a search of his Senate papers donated to the University of Delaware, Biden argued that they don't contain any personnel files, saying that if a record of this complaint does exist, it would be in the National Archives, and he asked that those records be made public.
Because, look, the fact is that there's a lot of things of speeches I've made, positions I've taken, interviews that I did overseas with people, all of those things relating to my job. And the idea that they would all be made public in the fact while I was running for public office, they could be really taken out of context. Their papers are position papers. They are documents that existed and that when I, for example, when I met with Putin or when I met with whomever, and all of that to be fodder in a campaign at this time, I don't know of anybody who's done anything like that. And so the National Archives is the only place there would be anything having to do with personnel records. There are no personnel records in the Biden papers at the university.
So personnel records aside, are you certain there was nothing about Tara Reade in those records? And if so,
I am absolutely certain.
Why not approve a search of her name in those records?
Approve a search of her name?
Yes, and reveal anything that might be related to Tara Reade in the University of Delaware records.
There is nothing. They wouldn't. They're not there. And if it's, I don't understand the point you're trying to make.
The point I'm trying to make is that
there are no personnel records by definition.
In other news, the New York Times on Friday morning notes, quote, as the death toll from the coronavirus over 8 weeks surpasses the total American military casualties in 8 years of major combat in Vietnam, Mr. Trump has led no national mourning. In his daily news conferences, he makes only perfunctory references to those who've died as he stiffly reads opening remarks, exhibiting more emotion when grieving his lost economic record than his lost constituents. Well, on Thursday, when confronted with the death toll of over 60,000 Americans and counting, the empathy-challenged White House resident tried to present it as a positive. Hey, we're number one.
And, we're the leader of the world. We're really the leader, in this case, the leader of the world. And we've done better. If you look at our deaths, if you look at mortality rates, if you look at the things in fact, I'm going to get a chart because it's maybe the most impressive thing, right? How we've done. And that's a tribute to the governors and it's a tribute to the federal government and all of us working together. But I would love you to get that if you could, because we're right at the top, meaning top in a positive way of those charts. I think you're going to see economic numbers that are going to be fantastic. I believe it very strongly. And you're going to start to see it with the transition period, which is number 3. And quarter 4, you're going to have tremendous numbers.
In a really sick juxtaposition, Trump has blocked the release of a pool of disaster relief funds specifically intended to help families cover burial costs, causing many families to turn to GoFundMe to be able to bury their loved ones who've succumbed to the virus. At the same time, Trump announced a 4th of July fireworks celebration at Mount Rushmore. In other disturbing news, hundreds of protesters, some carrying guns, assault rifles, crowded into Michigan's Capitol building on Thursday to demonstrate against Governor Gretchen Whitmer's stay-at-home order designed to curb the spread of the virus. The organizers of the event, a group called Michigan United for Liberty, said it wanted the state to allow businesses to open. Whitmer on Thursday extended her state of emergency order, which was set to expire Friday, until May 28th. But the Republican-controlled legislature declined to endorse the move and threatened to take her to court. We know that the pandemic won't be under control unless and until there's a vaccine, and we've been told it could take a year to 18 months to get one. Now comes news that researchers at Oxford University had been working on a coronavirus vaccine already and could potentially have one ready to go by the end of the year. NBC's Richard Engel has the story.
Even while the research at Oxford University is still to be completed, and the researchers there think that they will have test results by this summer, they are beginning manufacturing immediately and on a massive scale. The CEO told me that they want to have, by year's end, 100 million doses ready. And if the results prove to be negative and the vaccine is ineffective or dangerous or fails the trials in any way, then they dispose of them and they've lost that gamble.
Meanwhile, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence on Thursday released a statement saying that COVID-19 occurred in nature and was not genetically modified. Donald Trump, of course, has been blaming China. He was asked about that statement on Thursday by John Roberts of Fox.
The Director of National Intelligence today put out a statement saying that they believe it was naturally occurring, it was not man-made. But
Who is that? Who is that said that?
The Office of the Director of National Intelligence.
Who in particular? Who was the man that made that statement?
It was a statement that the ODNI...
Oh, he would know that, huh? National Intelligence. So we'll see.
That would be your Director of National Intelligence.
I think it's... I mean, you'd have to tell me who specifically, who made the statement.
The statement was just put out under the Office of the ODNI.
We'll see. I mean, I have to see the statement. I just haven't seen it.
Wow. And finally, one more casualty of our quarantine. This year's Little League World Series has been canceled because organizers say it would be impossible to hold the events amid ongoing restrictions on large gatherings and travel. The Little League World Series has been held every August since 1947 and has never been canceled before. I got good news. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. Please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Brr. Well, we will be going up to about 75 today, sunshine and clouds mixed. Winds will be out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour in a couple of hours. Though mostly clear this evening, with a low in the low 50s, becoming mostly cloudy with showers developing after midnight. Winds will be out of the southwest, and it looks like we're going to get about 1/10 of an inch of rain. And then tomorrow we're looking at over 1/3 with winds out of the southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County here in southern Oregon stands at 49 with none deceased. Grass pollen is high in the local area here at the mothership. The region is experiencing a good air quality on the index at 22 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is high at 7. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.11 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 72%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 55 and partly cloudy with coronavirus. Paris is 64 and partly cloudy with coronavirus. Rome is 69 and sunny with COVID-19. Kyiv is 63, mostly cloudy, and mostly they have COVID-19. Kabul is 59 and mostly cloudy, mostly with coronavirus. Hong Kong is 74 and fair, but not very fair with the coronavirus. Tokyo is 63 and clear with even more coronavirus. Sydney, Australia is 56 and clear, trying to beat back their coronavirus. San Francisco, California is 51 and partly cloudy with partly they want to open up everything, but they still have COVID-19. And New York is 56 degrees Fahrenheit with a light rain, still with coronavirus. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Gabrielle Tarol-Farber of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Russian Prime Minister Mikhail Mishustin told Vladimir Putin that he had been diagnosed with the new coronavirus and was temporarily stepping down to recover. Mishustin, age 54, suggested that First Deputy Prime Minister Andrei Belousov serve as acting Prime Minister in his absence. Putin, who was listening on a televised video conference, sighed when he heard the news, wished Mishustin a speedy recovery, and said he agreed with the proposed replacement. Mishustin, who has been one of the main coordinators of Russia's response to the new coronavirus, is the first high-ranking Russian official to publicly say they have the virus. He broke the news hours after the number of confirmed cases of the virus in Russia surged past the 100,000 mark.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Mark Holzenball, also of Reuters, brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The top U.S. spy agency said for the first time yesterday, Thursday, the American intelligence community believes the COVID-19 virus that originated in China was not man-made or genetically modified. The Office of Director of National Intelligence statement contradicted conspiracy theories floated by anti-China activists and some supporters of Trump, suggesting the new coronavirus was developed by Chinese scientists in a government biological weapons lab, from which it then escaped. It also echoed comments by The WHO, which on April 21st said all available evidence suggests the coronavirus originated in animals in China late last year and was not manipulated or made in a laboratory. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day and the week. But you know we're going to meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays, so stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day, all night, and all weekend for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goère. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.